What's going on, motivators? We got another video. Today we're about to talk about Sharia law in Florida. Let's get into this.
To let anybody know that we have some problems in this country, more than we should, with international terrorism. You just had this incident at Old Dominion University. Guy commits a terrorist attack. He's shouting Allahu Akbar. The media acts like they don't know the motive of that when he's doing it, but he had been somebody that had already been convicted of material support to terrorism. He was a citizen, but he was a naturalized citizen. And a lot of us are looking about that. It's like, okay, wait a minute. You come to this country, you get you probably shouldn't have been allowed in this country to begin with. You shouldn't have even qualified for naturalization, but somehow that happens. Then you get convicted for material support to terrorism. You should be denaturalized and sent back to where you came from.
And that's one thing I don't understand about this country so far as different states and how the rules around immigration works. If you come into the country, again, I don't understand this because I came, the idea to me and what the Constitution posed is to assimilate. You're coming to assimilate. You don't come in to just bring your country and your old values. Yes, you could bring some values that you have because it would be non-human to do so. But when you come into the country, you got to bring values and assimilate into this country as for an American. Be an American. No one is saying leave any values that you have that you were brought up with, but be an American and assimilate into the country.
Why are we tolerating this type of stuff in this country? And so much of it is self-inflicted. Look back at 9/11. That was an immigration problem. These are people that were coming over and their visas expired or they had all this. This wasn't like they showed up
And that is the problem too, is that you could see where the mess is going on, but instead of stopping it, you have leaders where they're trying to be either too friendly or too much politically correct that they end up missing those things. When you have someone or assailant who have done multiple violations, multiple crimes within the country, and you don't take heed to that, eventually those small crimes are going to lead to someone getting killed or multiple people getting killed. At the end of the day, we have to make sure that the people we put in leadership positions are the correct ones who are going to look for their constituents first. I am not saying don't look out for immigrants, but I'm saying constituents, then immigrants.
subterranean, on the shore, and they started doing this. They were open and notorious about doing this. And we see this all around the country. And a lot of it is just, I think, not doing what's right to protect the people. Some of it's political correctness. I don't really know what all goes into it, but we've been very strong in Florida from the beginning on all of this nonsense and doing whatever we can to keep the people of this state safe. And one of the things that the legislature did was you see different things. 9/11 obviously was, a massive terrorist attack, but you also see it with somebody going in with a suicide vest. You see it, somebody going in and shooting people, doing the chants. That is kind of the formal, explicit jihad actions that we see that happens in the United States, when honestly it should never happen, because you shouldn't have people in this country who hate this country. And that's
the thing. It does not just happen in the United States. It's happening around the world. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, it's not everybody. And I agree with that. It's not everyone from that sector, but it's a majority of people who come over here who have different ideals as far as what American is. And they practice in a lot of countries in the Middle East that they hate America. So when you come in with that same motive, you never know. You might have sleeper cells or anything to wake someone up into the idea of well, yes, I've known it. Here is my chance.
Big problem with immigration for many, many decades in this country. But you see that, and you see it around the world. But then you also have a more stealth version of jihad. And that is what we see in Europe, quite frankly. Massive migration of people into these Western European countries. They don't want to be like Western Europeans. They want to take their worldview and impose that in other lands. And part of that is, of course, the imposition of Sharia. but it also goes through a whole bunch of other things. And
Sharia law is a Muslim religious law that lays down governing principles for spiritual, mental, and physical behavior that must be followed by Muslims. Regarded as God's command for Muslims, Sharia law is essentially Islam's legal system. Sharia law is drawn from the Quran and the Sunnah and the examples set forward by Prophet Muhammad. It is an essential guide to Islamic life that encompasses a whole range of behavior and faith practices, from praying 5 times a day to abstaining from pork and alcohol. Sharia law can...
But here's the thing. I don't have to go too deep into this. Off the bat, this is conflicting with Christianity, and it's going to conflict with the founding fathers on how they founded this country. So the Constitution pretty much goes against Sharia law already. You will have two different things when it's conflicting. So either you have a Constitution or you have Sharia law. So which one would it be? You cannot come into the country and then take over.
Categorizes all men's activities into 5 categories: obligatory, recommended, permitted, discouraged, and forbidden. For instance, gambling, prostitution, and alcohol consumption are prohibited. Sharia is an Arabic word. It means a path to be followed to water. Prophet Muhammad introduced Islam in Saudi Arabia in the early 7th century. Most Arabs then lived in the desert, and water meant life. So a path to water has a powerful meaning as a path to righteous life. Sharia law is not all about punishment, as it is often portrayed and understood in the West. Sharia law is imposed and practiced with different degrees in different countries. For instance, Taliban rulers in Afghanistan imposed a more severe form of Sharia law.
So you have to look at this very holistically, and that's something that I've did. I mean, you remember earlier this year, last year, we were strong in designating the Muslim Brotherhood as a foreign terrorist organization, designating the Council of American Islamic Relations as a foreign terrorist organization. And in fact, CARE was an unindicted co-conspirator in the largest terror financing trial in American history, the Holy Land Foundation. So you see that, and okay, is that something that we want to be a part of? I mean, if there's a school that is allied with CARE, should you have any of your money going to things like that? I think not. And so part of what the legislature did in this bill was provide a statutory structure for the actions that we took earlier when we took those actions last year. It provided a process where we could identify.
Here's the thing too. We all know that what's going on in UK is crazy. They have courts now. We have Sharia law. Again, I don't believe that all Muslim people or people who come from the Middle East are bad. But what he just said is true. A lot of the assimilation is not assimilating. They're coming in and they're trying to bring their own value into the United States. We also see what's going on with Minnesota in the Somali town. The idea is like, let's blend. No one's saying you cannot have a Somali area. Of course you can, because like everywhere else, it's a melting pot, right? Bring those, you do have Chinatown. But a lot of them are not assimilated. There's a difference with you coming in, you bring your values, create a little thing, but invite people in that it's a melting pot. The whole idea of melting pot is we're supposed to blend in together. But to have your own little sector, that in itself is going to create problem. And one thing they're looking into this is that there are some areas in France, in Europe already, where there are no zones. Could you imagine there's an area in the United States, but because that it's under Sharia law, that there's a no zone that American federal or police officers could go into? I'm just making you think.
Marshall, who later became Chief Justice, was the one that was leading negotiations, and they just, the Americans just walked away. They're like, we ain't paying for that. So they come back, and one of the congressmen at the time, did a toast, and he said, in the U.S., millions for defense, but not 1 cent for tribute. And I think about what we're doing here. We'll do millions for public safety, millions for education, but never 1 red cent for jihad. Longest action Florida has ever taken to protect its people from this influence, and obviously it spans finance, it spans political, it spans culture, and then of course it can be overt acts like we've seen in Old Dominion and other places around the country.
We're saying that, and that's a good piece of legislation, good piece of bill that's being provided. Again, no one is saying immigration is bad. Everybody who's immigrated, you immigrated into the country for a reason. You're leaving something behind because you don't like where you were coming from. Against it. But again, I would say it's a clash. You cannot have Sharia law and Christianity in the same country. That's a big, big clash. So my thing is, if the Muslims are coming in, they have to assimilate into the country. We cannot have Sharia law in the country. Either that, there will be Sharia law, and it's going to kill any Christianity that we have. Anyway, let me know what you think. Okay, motivators, if you enjoy what you've seen and heard, please like, comment, subscribe, and share a Black veteran's perspective. Stay motivated.